Okay, so today I thought I might just introduce you to the books I've read so far in 2021. Don't be irritated, there'll be 2 clips I pre-recorded yesterday. One at my parents' house because most of my manga are there, and one here in this room, but I lent a book I read this year to a friend of mine yesterday. So let's just start with the most boring book, and I think it's only out in German, so that's also, yeah. I wanted to do some new rules, so this channel is gonna be multilingual, especially German and English, and later on also Japanese probably, and I'm gonna introduce all the books I read in German where there is no English translation to them, and I'm pretty sure for that one there isn't. I'll talk about them in German because I think it makes a lot of sense. I also read them in German, and this is also for like people who are able to read German, and I'll put subtitles again anyway. Let's start. Eins der Bücher, die ich erst vor kurzem gelesen habe für eine Hausarbeit von mir, ist die Globalisierung von Christoph Scherer und Karen Kunze, und darin geht's im Prinzip so zur Erklärung, was ist Globalisierung, wie ist es zur Globalisierung bekommen, beziehungsweise wie lange gibt es die Globalisierung schon. Sind ganz interessante Sachen gewesen, nicht vieles, was ich brauchte. Okay, back to English. Another book I read this year, just like for the last mini manga readathon. I reread the first volume of Black Butler and started the second one. And yeah, I still love it. It's still one of my favorite manga, and it's probably about I'm not sure, but like overall I rate this series like a 4.5 to 5 out of 5. This first one is like funny, and you still don't get to know like the whole story, but it's funny, and we love Tanaka with his tea in the background and his ho ho ho. Then I read the first volume of Detective Conan somewhere in the start, like in the first 2 months or so. I think I read it on the 24 readathon, but I'm not sure. I still love Detective Conan. Detective Conan was my first manga ever. What you're gonna see is anyway that like nearly all of the manga series I read in the last 4 months were basically series that were really near to my heart, where one of them are my favorite series. So Detective Conan was my first manga, and I still like it, just the drawing style, but that same goes for Black Butler. In the first volumes, the drawing styles are so tremendously different to the later drawings, and it's amazing. Then I started this in February or in January, and I finished it in April, which is basically because I waited between the Japanese literature readathons to finish this while a Japanese literature readathon. And it is The Miracles of the Namiya General Store. And I have a lot of feelings on this. So Keigo Higashino, the author of this one, is one of my favorite authors, and he writes a lot of Japanese mystery, Japanese thriller. But the thing is, this is a novel, a contemporary novel. In this one, the characters need like a bunch of development in a different kind of way you probably need in a thriller, and I think we felt that. They were always like, they started to develop the characters, but then it was always fell flat. So the characters were extremely black and white for me. They were thinking black and white. So they were either against it or they were for it. They weren't caught between opinions that much, and I'm not sure in all these situations described in this book, so many different situations and problems of different people, that made it really hard for me to actually like the characters or understand the characters especially. And that's why I gave it like only 3 stars, because the writing was good, was okay. I didn't have any problems actually reading it. And sometimes I at least got angry at the characters for what they were saying, which is at least an emotion while reading. And sometimes I also nearly cried at the actual story. And yeah, all in all, this book is basically about the Namiya General Store and his history, kinda. And people are getting advice from the Namiya General Store. They are putting a letter asking for advice through the front door after closing hours, and then the next morning before opening hours they'll find an answer in the milk crate behind the store. And the idea is really, really good. And I still must say, Keigo Higashino is a mastermind in like connecting his stories. Then, one of the first books I read this year was 7 Kinds of People You Find in Bookshops. And it's basically just really funny. I think I need to reread it, so it's probably only 3 to 4 stars. I think the name is actually like telling a lot about what's happening. They're just like giving explanations on what they think. And the author, John Bythel, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, is bookshop owner for I think over 20 years. Also die nächsten beiden Bücher präsentiere ich zusammen, weil sie quasi aus einer Reihe kommen. Und zwar sind das die drei Fragezeichen-Bücher. Die drei Fragezeichen ist eine Serie, die in Deutschland sehr bekannt ist für Kinder und eigentlich aus Amerika kommt, aber in Amerika hat es sich nicht so großer Beliebtheit erfreut, wie es das in Deutschland getan hat. Das heißt, als die Serie in Amerika abgesetzt wurde, wurde sie von Deutschland aufgekauft und wird seitdem weitergeführt. Und ich denke, das war so in den 1970ern. Genau, das hier sind 2 Bände, die sehr neu rausgekommen sind. Und die 3 Fragezeichen sind für mich mit das Beruhigendste auf der Welt und das ist so meine Kindheit einfach. Dann haben wir einmal die 3 Fragezeichen und der weiße Leopard, wo es tatsächlich auch um eine japanische Sage geht und ein japanisches Kunststück und dieses Kunststück wird entwendet und der ganze Fall muss aufgeklärt werden von den 3 Fragezeichen. Und dann noch der Fluch der Medusa. War, glaube ich, für mich nicht ganz so gut wie der weiße Leopard, war aber wieder sehr lustig. Ist, glaube ich, eher so eine 3, das andere eher eine 4. Am Anfang wird ein Brief gestohlen und dann geht es plötzlich darum, Geheimcodes zu lösen, eine Frau davor zu beschützen, überfallen zu werden und das Ganze ist sehr, sehr verstrickt und geht im Prinzip am Ende auch um eine sehr krasse Verschwörung und die muss halt aufgelöst werden. Okay, so back to English. The Housekeeper and the Professor by Yoko Ogawa. I watched the movie last July, knowing I want to read this book, but it was for a prompt for a readathon, so yeah. And then I did read the book because always something else got in between, and contemporary is something I read pretty slowly. So yeah, this is the contemporary and it's basically on a housekeeper that's going obviously to a professor, but the problem of this professor is that he got into an accident, and while he can remember everything that was before the accident and all his math problems because he's a math professor, he can't remember anything that farther ago than 80 minutes. So every day he's asking the housekeeper the same questions and stuff, and then he's giving like an explanation of what's like he's asking for her birthday and he's giving an explanation on the date because of the numbers, or about her shoe size or her phone number. And this is really funny. And later on, she needs to bring her small son because she is like raising him alone. The professor starts to have like a deep connection to her son, and a lot of stuff like it's slow, but a lot of stuff is happening. And I'm not a math fan. Like I never was good at math, but I still think it's like really good described how it's working. I think I gave this like about a 4 out of 5 or 4.5. So another book I read was The Tokyo Zodiac Murders by Soichi Shimada. I liked it a lot. I didn't like it as much as another book I'm going to present to you later in the video. Gave it like about a 4.5 out of 5 because I didn't like it as much as the other one. But what I like a hell lot about this book is basically that the author is writing you letters in between telling you to solve the case by yourself because he gave you all the hints. The prologue that is extremely confusing, and then we have Act 1, which is basically just giving you an introduction on the case and everything, and like before they actually get to the conclusion in the last act, the author is telling you again he gave you all the hints, and there's like sketches in between, like you get all the data for the family and stuff. So for example, yeah, a family tree. So yeah, basically we have an artist found dead, but he was planning on something on killing somebody else, and these girls died as well, but they died after the death of this artist. But he was specifically talking about how to kill them, and that's where how they came was how they were killed. And now the question is, how is this possible? Okay, then I read Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. And this book is basically like short stories set in the same space. It's telling stories about different people in this cafe. People who are related to the cafe or people who aren't really related to the cafe. In this cafe, you can actually travel back in time, but you need to be back before the coffee gets cold. So you have like a time limit, and there's a lot of other rules. And all the different stories in here are on some different topic, but are still really, really sad. Or they are happy. They're kind of like this bittersweet kind of thing. And I would really, really recommend this book. So this is one of the rare 5 out of 5 contemporary reads for me. Die letzten 2 Bücher, die ich zeigen werde in diesem Ausschnitt, sind beides Bücher illustriert von Benjamin Lacombe, einem französischen Illustrator. Ich muss sagen, von denen, die ich wirklich gelesen habe, ist Die erstaunliche Familie Appenzell eins meiner Lieblingsbücher. Wir verfolgen die ganze Zeit aus einer bestimmten Perspektive ein Mädchen, das über ihre Familie erzählt. Und es gibt ganz, ganz viele unterschiedliche Charaktere, die alle sehr speziell sind. Und sie erzählt im Prinzip, wie sich diese Familie entwickelt hat und wie sich die unterschiedlichen Familienmitglieder entwickelt haben, die alle ganz speziell sind. Ich denke, das sieht man auch ganz gut auf dem Cover, dass die alle etwas speziell sind. Ich liebe die Illustration und gleichzeitig ist bei diesem Buch auch einfach die Story dahinter sehr süß gemacht und deswegen bekommt es von mir auch eine 5 von 5. Wieder illustriert von Benjamin Lacombe und umgeschrieben die Geschichte die Geschichte von Der Zauberer von Oz von Sebastian Perez. Und im Prinzip ist das Ganze aus einer anderen Perspektive erzählt, als ich das so für mich in Erinnerung habe. Und ich glaube, es war aus der Perspektive des Strohmanns erzählt. Und es ist, glaube ich, auch ein ganzes Stück kürzer als die eigentliche Variante. Aber ich mag das Buch. Der Zauberer von Oz hat von mir, glaube ich, 4 Sterne oder so bekommen. Nicht ganz so gut wie die erstaunliche Familie Appenzell. Ich habe noch ein weiteres Buch gelesen, das ich vergessen hatte, das bei meinen Eltern noch zu Hause ist. Und ich habe es vergessen, vermutlich, weil es kein sonderlich gutes Buch war. Mein erstes Buch 2021 war ein Graphic Novel namens Sherlock Holmes und die Zeitreisenden. Und ich persönlich bin großer Sherlock Holmes und großer Detective Fiction Fan. Aber bis darauf, dass sie gesagt haben, es ist Sherlock Holmes, dieser Charakter, ist 1:1 nichts realistisch daran oder nichts irgendwie für mich mit Sherlock Holmes in Verbindung zu bringen. Dieses Buch hat 1:1 nichts mit Sherlock Holmes zu tun, außer dass die Charaktere Holmes und Watson heißen. Und damit ende ich jetzt diesen Abschnitt und gebe hinüber zu Adele von gestern, die euch dann noch ein Buch vorstellt. Das ist auch eins meiner Lieblingsbücher von diesem Jahr bisher. Und danach in die Mangas rübergeht, die ich noch bei meinen Eltern gelesen habe. The Dikagon House Murders by Yukito Ayatsuchi. And Ayatsuchi also wrote the light novel which the manga and anime and others based on. And first of all, I love this cover. And second of all, this book is really amazing. It's like an homage on the actual golden age of detective fiction. And also, like, I knew who it was from the start, but I didn't know how that person was doing it. So I would really recommend it. It's basically about a group of students that are from different departments and different years, but they are together in a detective fiction club at university, and they're basically like the inner circle of this club, and they go to an uninhabited island that has like a backstory about on a man living there and a crime being done, and they want to kind of solve this crime, and that's basically the idea, but then everything turns around. I think it's amazing. I gave it a 5-star. I'm really excited to hopefully, when there's more translated stuff, read more of Yukito Ayasuchi. One manga I reread this year, and it's the only one on this stack that I didn't read for Mini Manga Readathon, is Namiya Sagi, in German Tränenhase. There's 10 volumes to this. For all the other manga as well, I didn't pull out all volumes because it would be a pain to sort them back in and everything would like fall over. And so also after the 10 volumes, it's closed. So yeah, and obviously I'm pretty sure you can see on the cover, it's a shoujo manga. And I think it was one of my favorite shoujo mangas, or one of my first and favorite shoujo mangas when I was like younger, when I was 12 to 14, 15. And I read it on like over 2 years span, because I read it when it was like starting and then still releasing in Germany. And I really liked it back then, and I still think it's like kind of refreshing and cute to read it now. Also, the story isn't as typical. Then I read the first 5 volumes of Kuroko no Basket. And Kuroko no Basket, or Kuroko's Basketball in English, is my favorite anime, or like I have my own shrine there in the background, so merch shrine. And oh my god, it was such a hype in my high school years. When I read this, I totally got into it again. I still totally understand why I like bought a bunch of merch and everything. I still love Kuroko no Basket, and I think the humor, it's so funny, it's hilarious. So next one, also really nice, it's Hyoka. And Hyoka is based on a light novel actually, and I still haven't read the light novel, but I'm really excited to someone read it. Hyoka is basically a high school mystery, and it has like a slice of life and really slight romance touch, and also like about a 4.5 to 5 out of 5 for me, because I love my mystery. Then we all have the only one that isn't a reread for me, or like not true, but the only one I didn't know the story of. Let's say it like this. So this is Kyo by Junji Ito. It was my first Junji Ito, and I must say Kyo was sadly only like a 3 stars for me. And I think for me, the thing is, it's psychological, right? And I like the art style. I understand why everybody's hyping it, but I felt like something was missing on the story. So the focus was extremely on the art style, and for me, I just like to have a deeper, like a still deeper meaning to my story, and like a faster flow probably. So I like Judge or Another, which is coming in a minute. Yeah, so Kyo was only like a 3-star for me. The drawings were nice, the story was okay. The last manga I read is the full collection of Another. First of all, let's appreciate how beautiful this collection is. So yeah, and also we have like colored pages, like it's still in the actual manga, and also like in between, every time it's turning actually from one volume into the next, there's a colored version in it. And the thing about this special edition is that there's also, which you can see on the title as well, +0, so there is the actual chapter 0 and the story beforehand in there, and I still love this. So that's what I meant with Kyo was the only one I didn't know the story of. So Another wasn't directly a reread I never read the full collection before. I always only got through the first volume in this whole collection, but now I read the full collection. And the thing is, I watched the anime of another for maybe 3 to 5 times when I was younger, because it's one of my favorites. It was also one of my first anime back then, and it left an impression, and I always was like a mystery kind of girl. Reading another was making me excited again. It's still so interesting, and I think I really want to read the light novel it is based on as well. In this manga, there is mentioned that in the manga and the anime, the actual mangaka was actually changing like a few characters and building even more backstory to these characters. So the actual light novel will still be a little bit different, and maybe it will be a bit disappointing because these backstories bringing a special feeling to the manga and the anime. But I still want to read it and see like the actual story it is based on. So these are the manga I read while I was at my hometown, at my parents' house.